For several years, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have presented their post-royal lives as centered on service, advocacy, and charitable impact. The Archewell organization was meant to symbolize that mission, offering a clear demonstration that their decision to step away from royal duties was not a retreat from responsibility, but a redirection toward a modern form of philanthropy. Recently, however, renewed attention on the organization's financial disclosures has sparked widespread debate and raised questions that are no longer confined to critics alone. Publicly available filings indicate a significant imbalance between money spent and money received during a recent reporting period. Expenses reportedly exceeded incoming donations by several $million. While such a situation is not automatically evidence of wrongdoing, charities can spend reserves, receive delayed grants, or operate across fiscal years. It is precisely the kind of discrepancy that draws attention from analysts, journalists, and watchdog groups. When the numbers appear counterintuitive, the natural response is to ask how the gap is being funded and whether the structure of the organization adequately explains it. Supporters of the couple argue that the figures reflect accounting timing and operational costs rather than misconduct. Detractors counter that the lack of detailed public explanation fuels skepticism. What complicates matters is not simply the imbalance itself, but the broader context in which it appears. Archewell has already faced criticism in the past for delayed filings and reporting errors, issues that were later corrected, but nonetheless left a lingering impression of administrative fragility. Charitable organizations tied closely to public figures operate under a different kind of spotlight. Transparency is not just a legal requirement, it becomes a reputational necessity. When explanations are vague or slow to emerge, speculation fills the vacuum. That dynamic has played out repeatedly in celebrity philanthropy, and the Sussexes are hardly the first to encounter it. However, their particular circumstances, royal associations, global media interest, and a brand built on moral authority amplify the stakes. At the same time as financial questions resurface, Archewell has undergone structural changes. The organization has shifted language around its operations, placing greater emphasis on partnerships and sponsored initiatives, rather than functioning solely as a traditional standalone foundation. In nonprofit terms, this is not unusual. Many organizations evolve toward fiscal sponsorship models to reduce administrative burdens or collaborate more efficiently. Yet timing matters. When restructuring coincides with scrutiny, observers naturally wonder whether the changes are strategic evolution or defensive maneuvering. Critics argue that fiscal sponsorship can reduce transparency by placing financial reporting under another entity's umbrella. Advocates say it allows organizations to focus on mission rather than bureaucracy. Both perspectives can be true, and without access to internal decision-making, it is difficult to determine intent. What is clear is that the transition has not been accompanied by detailed public communication, explaining how oversight, accountability, and governance will function going forward. Compounding the uncertainty is a notable turnover of staff. Reports indicate that numerous employees and senior figures have departed over a relatively short period. High turnover does not automatically imply dysfunction. Startups, mission-driven organizations, and media-adjacent nonprofits often experience churn. But when departures include executives with institutional knowledge, it raises operational concerns. Continuity is critical in managing finances, compliance, and partnerships, particularly for an organization already under scrutiny. Former staff have not spoken publicly in detail, but industry observers note that frequent leadership changes can disrupt internal controls. Even well-intentioned organizations can falter if systems are not consistently maintained. In philanthropy, perception matters almost as much as practice. Donors and partners tend to avoid uncertainty, regardless of whether that uncertainty is justified. These developments also intersect with earlier controversies tied to Prince Harry's charitable involvement elsewhere, including workplace complaints that attracted regulatory attention even if they did not result in formal findings. Each episode on its own might be manageable. Together, they create a cumulative narrative that is difficult to ignore. For Harry and Meghan, the risk is not limited to a single organization. Archewell is deeply intertwined with their personal brand. Their public identity since leaving royal life has been anchored in the idea that they would model a different kind of leadership, values-driven, transparent, and impact-focused. Questions about financial clarity strike at the core of that promise. It is also worth noting what has not happened. As of now, there has been no confirmation of a formal investigation by tax authorities or charity regulators. Public representatives have stated that the organization is compliant and that reports of investigations are inaccurate. That distinction matters. Scrutiny from media and commentators is not the same as legal action. However, history shows that sustained attention can eventually prompt regulatory review, particularly when documentation is already being discussed in public forums. The challenge for the Sussexes lies in communication. Denials alone rarely resolve doubts. In nonprofit governance, clarity is achieved through explanation, outlining funding sources, detailing expenditures, and articulating how decisions are made. Without that, even lawful activity can appear suspect. As the discussion continues, the broader question becomes whether Archewell can stabilize its operations and restore confidence before skepticism hardens into permanent reputational damage. Charitable credibility, once lost, is notoriously difficult to regain.
Beyond organizational mechanics, the unfolding scrutiny has personal and professional implications for Harry and Meghan that extend far beyond balance sheets. Their philanthropic work is not a side project. It is the foundation upon which their post-royal identity has been constructed. Any erosion of trust in that foundation threatens everything built upon it. Observers have begun to speculate about the strain this places on the couple themselves. Public-facing partnerships often mask private pressure, and when a shared mission encounters sustained criticism, internal tensions can emerge. For couples whose relationship is closely tied to joint ventures, professional challenges rarely remain purely professional. There are also external consequences. Potential donors, corporate partners, and aligned nonprofits typically conduct risk assessments before associating with high-profile foundations. Even unproven allegations or unresolved questions can be enough to pause or cancel collaborations. In philanthropy, reputation functions as currency. When confidence drops, opportunities shrink. The Sussexes' commercial ventures intersect with this reality. Entertainment deals, lifestyle branding, and media projects depend heavily on public goodwill and institutional trust. A narrative of instability, whether financial, organizational, or interpersonal, can influence how agencies, producers, and investors assess future involvement. Recent shifts in public relations representation and professional support have only intensified speculation about behind-the-scenes recalibration. From a strategic standpoint, the situation presents limited options. One path involves increased transparency, proactive disclosure, detailed reporting, and a willingness to address uncomfortable questions directly. Another involves retreat, reducing visibility, restructuring quietly, and hoping attention shifts elsewhere. The latter approach may offer short-term relief, but often prolongs suspicion in the long run. There is also the matter of legacy. For Prince Harry, charitable work has long been central to his public role, predating his marriage and his departure from royal duties. Any perception that these efforts lack rigor or accountability risks redefining how that legacy is remembered. Reconciliation with family members, already strained, becomes even more complex when controversies intersect with institutions that prize stability and discretion. For Meghan, whose ambitions in media and entrepreneurship rely on narrative control and aspirational branding, prolonged controversy presents a different challenge.
consumer-facing ventures are particularly sensitive to trust. Audiences may tolerate personal reinvention, but they are less forgiving of perceived inconsistency between stated values and operational reality. The discussion surrounding Archewell has also highlighted a broader issue within celebrity-led philanthropy. High visibility attracts donations quickly, but sustaining impact requires administrative discipline that is often undervalued. When organizations are built around personalities rather than systems, they become vulnerable to disruption when attention shifts or leadership changes. None of this guarantees wrongdoing. Many organizations experience growing pains, especially under extraordinary public scrutiny. Accounting anomalies can have mundane explanations. Staff turnover can reflect evolving priorities rather than internal collapse. Yet public confidence is shaped not by what is possible, but by what is demonstrated. As questions persist, the absence of definitive answers continues to invite interpretation. Media cycles thrive on uncertainty, and silence is often interpreted as avoidance rather than prudence. If Archewell's leadership intends to put concerns to rest, the window for doing so through clear, factual communication may be narrowing. What remains uncertain is whether regulators will decide that public interest warrants closer examination. Such decisions are influenced by patterns, not headlines alone. Repeated issues, even if individually resolved, can collectively justify inquiry. For any organization, especially one linked to global figures, that prospect is disruptive regardless of outcome. The situation ultimately forces a reckoning with expectations. Harry and Meghan positioned themselves as alternatives to traditional institutions, promising a more ethical and effective approach to influence and service. That promise invites higher scrutiny, not lower. Independence does not eliminate accountability. It intensifies it. As public debate continues, the future of Archewell will likely depend on whether it can move beyond reactive responses and establish a stable, transparent operating model. If it does, current concerns may fade into a footnote. If it does not, they risk becoming the defining chapter of the Sussex philanthropic experiment. In the end, the story is less about numbers than about trust. Trust in governance, trust in leadership, trust that stated values align with executed actions. Once that trust is questioned, restoring it requires more than reassurance. It requires evidence. Whether this moment becomes a turning point or a downward spiral remains to be seen. What is clear is that the scrutiny is unlikely to disappear on its own. Public figures who build their identity on doing good must be prepared to show, in detail, how that good is done.